KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative, Fresno Clovis. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today we have Terry Cox. She is a board member with Central Unified School District. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sevag. I appreciate your opportunity and an invitation.
So I will say that I am a product of Central Unified Schools. I went to Herndon Barstow when it was a K through 8th, and then I went to Central High School. So I'm one of your own.
Very good. And we have very many successful graduates of Central, and I think that's a representation of a great community we have there. And I appreciate that you're one of our own. My three sons are all graduates there, and we really appreciate the school district for what they did for them.
So before we talk about Central some more, because I'm going to ask you some questions about the school board, and I want to know why you decided that this is something that you wanted to do, because it's evenings, you put in a lot of time reviewing material, and for the audience members who don't know, I mean, you have agenda packets, and there are all kinds of things in the agenda packets, and you need to read those documents.
Correct.
Talk about what it is that got you motivated to run.
I think there wasn't really an aha moment for me. I really don't think I said, I've got to go run for this seat. I think it was just that I was a very involved parent in the school district. I had been president of the parent club. My children were active in a lot of sports. At that time, the new high school had just opened, and we had gone through a really large community process on when that new high school opens, what are we doing about boundaries, what are we doing about programming. And I was fortunate to be asked to be on the Citizens Advisory. So I became really involved on the inside to see that things aren't as simple as you think. You may think you come in with an answer, but when you hear all the details, that answer might not be the same as what you started with. So I think when my opportunity came, when two seats became vacant during midterm, two people resigned off the board, and they did open hearing interviews, and I was selected to fill one of the seats for the remainder of the term. So I did that, and the next term I ran for election, and I've run 4 elections since then. So.
And congratulations,
well, thank you.
Recently were victorious in your latest election. Since you're talking about election, I want to ask about that. What is the difference between running for school board and, say, running for bigger offices like governor, or the presidency is one that we heard about recently? So what are the differences? Well,
I think comparing it to a local race, it's very similar. I've ran or been at least in leadership roles in 2 city council races, 2 board of supervisor races, and 2 mayor races. I equate them pretty much with the school board race, and I think that the key components of that is getting to the door and actually talking to your constituent. I also think it's number one is listening, because that opinion of your constituencies is what you need to be carrying forward. Not necessarily something that you know or something you believe. It's the majority of what you're hearing. So I think the differences from, like, say, the presidential race, I think that is more media driven. I think that that there's just not as much opportunity for that personal connection. So I think that those are more run on who can get the best message out and not. And I think on a school board, it's important to get the message out, but it's also important to have that connection.
I'm smiling because I recall I was in my living room on a Sunday one day, and I was sitting there, and I got a knock on the door, and I walked, and there you were.
Yes.
And when you do those kind of things, do you hear the issues? I mean, are parents expressing to you what the issues are they're having in the schools?
I think I hear a good number of them. I know some parents are very private and they want to kind of handle things in their own. But I typically, when I go to the door, in all the years I've been on the board, I've posted my phone number on the website. It's my personal cell phone. I'm accessible when I go to the door. Even here's my information. I'd like you to vote for me. But even if you don't, here's my phone number. If you need to contact me about anything, I'll be glad to help you with it. And there was several issues when I was out there in the knocking on doors that they just said, oh, I'm just stuck here. And I at least gave them an opportunity, a direction of where they could actually go further in discussing their problems. I kind of connected them with the right places to do what they do. So
I have two small children. Sell me on why I should send them to Central Unified Schools. And I'm a product of Central
Yes.
Unified, but I know that some of the schools in my area are not as strong as some of the schools maybe in the north
Right.
or the eastern part of Fresno County.
right.
So why should I send my kids to Central?
Well, I think one of the good reasons is because that's where I chose to bring my kids, and I chose it on the fact that we moved here in '89, and our children were very small, from Napa. And Napa is a very small town. It was a population of about 40,000 when we left, and the schools there were very, very community-based, and they were oriented with all the families knew each other. So when my husband and I relocated our family here, that was something we were looking for. And all the realtors tended to want to show us houses in Clovis because we're selling a house in Napa. And we really didn't feel the fit there. We did check the schools out. But my husband, one day, he was just checking out more housing, and he happened upon the elementary school that this house that we were looking at would be. And he was so impressed because the principal was standing at the gate, shaking every student's hand, saying their name by first name. And it was just really indicative of how the community is. We don't have a city in Central. Central Unified is our city base. And all the community pulls together when necessary. And I think that that was one of the reasons that I feel that all kids have a really good specialized opportunity in Central. They're not overlooked. It's a smaller community. Everybody is there to help.
What about the parents that are worried about the fact that maybe the numbers, so like there's some websites that'll say X, Y, and Z school has a 10 out of 10,
Yes.
and some websites that have a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Should we be paying attention to that number, or can we as parents make a difference?
Well, I think that those numbers are something that every parent should be aware of. I wouldn't necessarily say if the numbers are lower that a parent should steer away from that school. And the reason I would say that is because all of our schools are made up of different demographics. And sometimes we have a lot of challenges because we may have a student that comes in with no English skills. So the scores are a little bit lower. That doesn't mean that that student's not very intelligent. That just means that the testing right now isn't working well with them, and it may bring the score down. But Central has done a very good job in providing for all of our students, no matter what language they come in with. In fact, our high school next year, one of the initiatives I brought forward is that in the next school year, the 17-18 school year, the high school students will be able to enroll for a Hmong or Punjabi language class. So alongside of our French and our Spanish, we'll now be teaching Hmong and Punjab. And the opportunities that brings for interpretation, they can work in government fields, they can work in medical offices, they can translate. It gives them a multitude of different opportunities with our country as it grows and languages that are becoming more predominant.
What are some of the issues facing students at Central Unified? Are they the same across the board? One I will talk about is bullying.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I think that bullying is a problem. I mean, and I think that there's not a school district that's immune from it. And I think if we look back to when we went to school, there was bullying, but maybe we didn't identify it as much. Now we're much smarter. We're identifying the bullying younger. We're educating our students to know what bullying is and what to do to kind of curb that, reporting it, just basically how to react to it. So I do agree. I think bullying is a problem, but I think that we're getting smarter on how to handle it.
Homework. You know, when I was growing up, I did homework on my bed, laying down, or in front of the TV. My habits weren't the best. My grades were good, but my habits weren't the best. Then as I grow up, people say, no, the child needs to have a certain spot to do their homework. How important is homework, and how important is the location they do their homework, and how important are parents in that equation?
Well, I think it's individualized by child. I think that some children were like you, that they can actually focus when they're sitting on a bed. Some children need a little bit more structure, and I think that parent needs to know the difference on the progress and keep talking to the teacher. Is my student progressing? Is my student actually, when they're turning things in, are they look like they're actually progressing, working, coming to higher levels? For myself, my children grew up doing it on the kitchen table. There wasn't a really set, pod or anything to sit in. They sat on the kitchen table so that I could watch them while we're doing work, and they could ask questions. So I think it's up to each family to find a comfortable spot for their children. And if your child is one that's distracted easily, that would probably need a little bit more of an isolated study area.
Walk us through what a day is like for a board member at Central Unified School District. So you get the board packet, you go to board meetings. What is contained in that packet? I know it differs, but for the most part, what is it that you're doing?
Well, and I think most people don't realize we're not there all day. We all have full-time day jobs, and so our packets will be delivered typically on a Friday afternoon. We get them electronically because we do an agenda online, and sometimes we get the PowerPoints or we get the budget books that are 2 or 3 inches thick along with those agenda packets. But it takes me pretty much through the weekend to go through the entire packet. And then on Monday, I'm able to send off questions from staff. Can I get some clarification on this? Or prepare for asking the questions at the board meeting. So I think over and all, we meet every other week. And I think it's about 6 to 7 hours of prep time just to get to the board meeting, another 3 to 4 hours for the board meeting, and then maybe a couple hours of follow-up from that board meeing.
Is this a volunteer position? I mean, is this a small stipend?
It's a small stipend. We actually get, I'm gonna have to go back and think. It's $240 a month, I think is what it is, $240. But I don't get the check. I actually donate it back to the foundation.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
So that's just, to me, it's something that I think I collected at first, and I used it towards my son's college, the last child.
And the reason I asked the question is because you're putting in a lot of time. I mean, you're putting in hours and it's not just passive reading. I mean, it's analyzing.
It's not just the meeting. It's our responsibility to be present at many of the school events. We're representing the community, and I feel we need to be accessible. I mean, other than when you're in the grocery store and they're tapping you on the shoulder with an ask question, I think that formalized school events, you need to be there to hear what they're saying and what the administration is saying. So it's many hours on top of just the preparing for the board meetings.
I know because I kind of understand what a school board does compared to what a city council and board of supervisors do. You do some important things. Do you think the community has a grasp of just how important the school board member position is?
I think that the community appreciates, at the end of the day, how the school operates, whether they realize what is driven by the board and what is not. And as a board, it's our duty to hire the superintendent who's actually running all of the components. So if that's running well, there's very little steering that we need to do, but we definitely need to be involved in most of it. But I think the community does appreciate the work. Do they know the hours? Maybe not.
The bond
Yes.
was recently passed, and so what should we expect from this bond? Was it a good thing?
It was a really good thing. I think it was a difficult decision for us to take it back out because we had a very successful bond the last time, and this is the same bond. We are just reauthorizing it. But if we had not passed this bond, instead of seeing a high school in the next 5 years, it had been 10 to 15 years from now. We also have a partially finished elementary school that it will be finished immediately. So those are really important to us because overcrowding impacts our kids' comfort and learning abilities.
Are we growing as far as Central Unified School District? And I say we because I'm a part of the district. I live in Central Unified School District. Are we growing?
We're growing. Every year we have actually had growth in our district. I think we're the only district in the county, including Clovis, that has growth every year. I think they were flat one year. But we are also, according to the city, the planned growth area, continuing. So it's not going to stop. We're going to continue to grow. And we grow 300 to 500 students a year. And that's quite a bit. That's almost a school. And we need to catch up on that growth because of the bonds. The state passed a bond also. The state was not providing any construction funding since 2009. So with their bond passing and our bond passing, we're going to try to do some catch up on that. But growth, when I joined the board in 2000, there were 10,000 students in our district. There's now over 16,000. So we've almost doubled.
Sounds like there's quite a bit of growth going on.
There is.
Where are the new schools? Do we have new schools? I mean, that's a question that,
Sure.
Of course we always have new schools planned. But in the near future, do we have some schools going up?
We do. Tilly Elementary, which is at Clinton and Valentine, is partially built, and it's just the one-story portion. When we sell some more bonds, we're going to build the two-story version, which will be the front part of the building. It'll be our first two-story school in the district. Then close behind that will be the beginning of our new high school at Grantland and Ashland. And the end of last year, we just purchased some property at Shields and Brawley on the northwest corner to build a new school. So those are some of the growth areas you'll be seeing pretty shortly. So we're going to need another middle school shortly. We need another elementary school right away, and we need a high school.
And that process sounds interesting. So the board approves, or what do you look? The better question is, when you've got these things in front of you, everything sounds great on paper, right?
Right.
What is it that you're doing when you get these items in front of you? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, we look first of all of our professional opinions that come with us, and that's going to be maybe staff or outside counsel. For looking for a site for a new school, we hired a demographic company that tells us where the growth is going to happen, where our current is. We don't want to build a school out here and then have to bus everybody to it. We want to see where that walk-in ability is. So Shields and Brawley was one of our areas that got the high priority of the next need. So we began looking along the Shields corridor for some property, and it's a combination of a right fit, right cost, and just being able to execute it. And so that this property, it took us probably about 6 or 8 months to settle on the property and to actually purchase.
So Shields and Brawley, what's going there? What kind of school is going there?
It will be an elementary school.
So elementary school will be there, and so actually I know exactly where that's at. That's like right across. There's a shopping center there,
Exactly.
not too far from Central Adult School.
Exactly. It's kind of a corner from that. It's just north of it.
So when you're getting ready to prep for these board meetings, you're able to ask your questions, or you fire off questions to staff, and so are there times where you're like, oh wow, now it makes more sense?
Well, there are, and it's just a matter of preparation. You want to go through it, and there's always something that will kind of pop out with you, and you may ask that question through the email to get it, so you're prepared for Tuesday. But that question might spur another question, and I'm always amazed that when I'm sitting listening to the presentation, that there's always an opportunity to change my mind about something after I hear some details that I didn't understand before. So it's always an opportunity to listen and to pull in all the information you can.
Partnerships. How important are partnerships to Central Unified School District? And the reason I asked that question is,
Yes.
I know in your other life, or your other hat is, the city of Fresno, and so how important is partnerships?
Well, I think partnerships in Central are just, they're just way important. And the reason of that is, like we talked before, it doesn't have a city center. It has a community. So the funding sources doesn't have taxes. It doesn't have any of those things going to it. It has school funding, period. So the support needs to come from our community, not just providing money or anything like that, but providing for our students their best interests, because their best interests are going to be their employees eventually. So I think that that's really important to form those partnerships young, form them in skills that the students will need, and form them in the support they'll need after they graduate.
What advice would you give for me? I have 2 kids, and let's say that I send them to Central Unified School District schools. What advice would you have for me as far as getting involved in, activities and stuff like that?
I would start with the classroom. Just start with the classroom. Go in a few days, see how the interaction is between the students, and then I would, as I did, I kind of went through the fundraising portion of the school through their site council or through their school board, and not school board, I'm sorry, but their parent clubs. Those are another way to actually see, an input and put money where it's needed. And I think further than that, before, not necessarily have to get into politics of it, but that's another avenue that you can do. But in the schools need so much support. If we could afford to have a staff as high as we wanted, it'd be fantastic, but we can't. Volunteers make a big difference.
So you mentioned that Central Unified is within a growth area. So are we expecting that this massive growth occur in west of 99?
We are. West of 99 is one of the targeted areas for the city, that in southeast Fresno. And that is because of the open ground it still has, where that opportunity doesn't happen in the middle of Fresno that's already infilled. So we have large amounts of land that still can be accumulated for subdivisions. In fact, there's one builder just across from the high school at Grantland and Ashland, and that's projected to have 2,600 homes at build out. So that's something that's going to happen in the next 10 years. So that growth will be enormous to Central Unified. But just in the last 3 months, we've had 2 or 3 housing tracts approved in our area. So those were like range from 179 homes to 80 homes. So we're looking at already another 400 or 500 homes being built in the next 5 years, approved already, not just what's coming in the pipeline.
How can people find out more information about these agenda items? And I mean, are they easy to read?
They are. They're online, and you can go to the city's website. You can go to the school district's website and go into Agenda Online. It's open to the public, and the public can see all the documents that are attached that we see. The only thing the public doesn't have access is personnel records that we see in closed session. So they see exactly what we see. And if they have questions, they can come to the meetings. There is a public comment period, and every item that we discuss, they have the opportunity to ask questions also.
And do you get a lot of parents coming in, or let me rephrase and ask, what has been the topic that has got the most energy or interest?
Okay, I think that like boundaries, it's always those B words. It's the boundaries, the budgets, and the busing. You know, those are the three things that will actually, like bring some interest, and that's because it's very personal to the families. It affects their daily life. It affects how they go to work, when they go to work, et cetera. So those topics tend to get more of an audience with us. However, if you ask me, not enough parents come. I would like to see a lot more parents come just to see how those decisions are made and get to know their board members so they would feel free and comfortable in talking with them.
What are your goals? I mean, what is it that you want to accomplish in your time on the board?
Well, I think that the goals keep rolling. I've been on the board for 16 years, and I can say I've accomplished a lot, but there's always something. And as long as my skill sets are valuable to the district, I would like to provide them there. And that's kind of the reason I chose to run again, is that I do work for the city of Fresno. I have insight on some of the development that's going to be happening. It helps with the school district. There's a connection there. We've been able to part with the city a lot in many instances with me to help with the recreation opportunities, building libraries. So I think that that's something that I'm happy with, just staying in that spot and being the liaison between the two.
And we touched on this a little bit earlier on the program, but what is it that people should be looking for in their school? I mean, now there are inter-district transfer opportunities. There are opportunities to send your kids to charter schools. There are different ways where parents can get their kids to certain schools. What is it that parents should be looking for?
I think I would go back to kind of what we looked for, a comfort for our children. We want to have that child matched with an atmosphere that is comfortable with them. I think that they're also looking to see that their child is engaged at all times. I want to hear when the kid runs in the house that he starts talking about his day. I think that's important. What the parent should be looking for is that it's not, not all bad news when it comes in the door. There's a mix, because I think every child has to go through some of the bad news. Maybe they didn't do so well on a test, but that's a learning skill for them. They learn how they fail. They learn how to get better and to succeed. So I think that's what parents should be watching, is that the children are going through that normal process. They're able to talk about their day. They're able to say the goods and the bads about the day, and it's just good practice for life, that you can be collaborative and share.
Parents asking questions. Should they be asking questions? I mean, if the child comes home and says, oh, I didn't learn this today, I guess the better question is, when should we draw the line and, say, you can ask questions, but not too many questions? I'd
say coming from me, there would never be. I think I asked a lot of questions. I think it's a good relationship with the teachers, and the district affords all of the parents in our district with a opportunity online parent portal to talk to the teacher directly. So if they have a question even that evening about why was this assignment, or what was, any questions, my student says that he didn't get an assignment, did he really not get an assignment? You have that direct connection with the teacher, and the teacher can connect with you if they feel that your child is not achieving what they should be achieving.
We're talking about teachers, and we're running out of time, but I have to ask you, teacher shortage, are you seeing that as well?
I think that we're not as impacted because Central is a desired place to go. And I think that we have, over the years, when we go to fairs, the career fair, that people come to put applications in, we have a line. But the shortage is really comes down to their professions. I mean, special ed teachers, et cetera. We have a shortage of those, even nurses. Those are when our shortages happen. That's a nation thing, it's a state thing, and Central is not immune from any of that.
Is it still a good profession to get into? I mean, there are people who tell me being a teacher 10, 15 years ago was great. Now it's not as good. But what are your thoughts? I mean, is it still a good profession?
I think it's rewarding. I know of several teachers that just have been in there for 34 years. I've known several that have been in there for 2 years, and they just think it's rewarding. I see a teacher as a teacher plus, with a plus mark, because they're just not teachers. They're counselors. They help them with, if there's a medical issue. So teachers have a chance, and they love it. They love the fact that they're serving a need. It's something that I look for. I want to be able to offer my skills to serve, to make sure the child's successful.
Tell us how people can get in touch with you. I mean, if they have any questions for you, or if they, want to learn more about the school board process, how can they be in touch with you?
Well, on the school district's website, under board members, we each have our phone numbers, and I have my personal cell phone number, and I always get back to you right away. Sometimes I don't answer the phone right away because I am working a full-time job, but I will get back to you that day or in that evening. And I think that I kind of guide people as much as I can. I think they appreciate it. And when they've moved out of my area, they still call me.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
making time and coming to the studio and sharing with us the insight on school boards. Because, again, I think that for the general public, they really don't understand the details and the importance of the role of a school board member.
And staying up with public law and school law. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's one of my favorite topics. I love to talk about children and their successes.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. Our guest this week has been Terry Cox. She's a board member with Central Unified School District. And for those of you who are not aware of where Central Unified School District is, it's west in Fresno, west of the 99. Thank you to the audience members listening to this broadcast on 90.7 FM, KFSR Fresno, and to those watching this broadcast on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. We hope that you enjoyed this program. Thank you to our volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. We couldn't do this program without them. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.